The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and welcome to the Managing for Best Results webinar. Grow and Lead Community and Youth Development grows the capacity of individuals and nonprofit organizations to lead progress in UP communities. A way in which we do this is by providing free monthly trainings like this one. This afternoon, you will receive a recording of the webinar, a PDF document including all of the slides, and a link to a 7-question survey. Please consider taking the survey to help us select topics that are relevant to the challenges that you face in your work. With that, I'd like to introduce Chad Mager, today's presenter. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and thank you everyone for being on the webinar this morning. And I hope that our time spent together is well worth it for you to take time and listen, or if you're listening to this recording later, that it's worth your time to even listen in later on. If anyone has listened to any webinars that I have done for Grow and Lead over the past year, maybe even 2 years, you'll see a common theme, and today's webinars is no different from that. There's some themes that as I've done more and more webinars on managing, on working with your employees, leadership, there are several things that just keep coming up over and over and over again, which really lead to best results, kind of like a best practice. So today we'll be diving in. I got a handful of things I want to share with you, and then hopefully at the end there'll be time for questions. Otherwise, I do have a slide at the very end with my contact information that you are welcome to get a hold of me afterwards if you have some specific concerns or questions you might have about managing to get the most out of your employees and for best results. So let's just jump right into it. I think the first 2 points I'm going to make are the most crucial, and you'll see why as we go along. Without the first two being solid and in place, the rest of them have deficiencies. And in fact, you can almost roll up everything else I say into the first two. Pretty much fits well. So the very first thing when you're managing people, to get the most out of them, you have to have great communication. If you're not communicating well with your employees, there is often confusion, discord, actually some kind of animosity can grow when people are not sure on what you're trying to communicate to them. So here's a few bullet points. When you communicate, you're looking for clarity. And you have to remember something. When in communicating, if you're ever taken a class on communication or a lesson online or whatever, there's the giver and the receiver of communication. And so the giver of the communication has to make sure that the message is clear for the one receiving it. Yes, there is some responsibility on the receiver's point to interpret and understand, but really it's the giver, it's the communicator's responsibility to make sure the message is clear and understood. And sometimes, I mean, a lot of times when we're managing employees, our instructions, our guidance is not clear. And so we wonder why people aren't doing what we say we want them to do when the manner in which we're saying it is confusing. It's not clear. It leaves too much room for error or too much room for interpretation. So as you communicate, clarity is important. The way you say something is important. So make sure that it's clear. Make sure that your tone, if it's verbal, your tone and your body language is communicating the same thing your words are. So in other words, if I was coming to an employee, I'm having a terrible morning and my face shows all sorts of Monday crabbiness all over it, and I'm trying to encourage someone that they need to step it up and get something done, can you just imagine what they are interpreting? They're interpreting that I'm angry at them or that I'm yelling or chastising them for not getting a part of the job done. That may not be my intent. However, that is what just was communicated. Do you see what I'm saying? So your body language, your tone, these are all important things. Written communication, which has become more and more common, whether it's through emails or heaven forbid, some places, unless you have work phones, but some people go as far as sending text to their employees. By the way, it's a total side note. If you send text to your employees' private phones, I'd suggest not doing that, but that's another topic for another day. If it's a work phone, completely acceptable. It's your work phone, but I know some managers that get off into sending stuff on personal phones. That's just not a good practice. Anyway, email, make sure again that it's clear that what you're writing, it's not always easy. In fact, it's very difficult to put tone or intent in a written document or a written email. So be very careful in choosing your words, that it's clear, especially when you do written, because written can come back and be shown as an example or evidence if someone's really confused or things go south. So make sure you're clear. Accuracy, obviously, make sure you're double checking, especially written things, that your information is being accurate. Thoroughness, making sure you're telling the complete story. If you're giving a list of what you want accomplished, goals that need to be done, make sure you're getting to the point A to Z. You're not skipping steps. You're not, it doesn't mean you have to be remedial in teaching people their jobs if they know their jobs. However, if you're giving something new, if you've not trained on this, if this is a new set of instructions and you're not thorough, you leave room again for misinterpretation. And then again, it's difficult to go back and say, well, you didn't do this right. Well, which part of this did I miss? And you say, well, in between here, you should have been doing this. Well, if you didn't tell them they should be doing that and they don't do it, it's kind of difficult to hold them accountable if you're not being thorough in your communication. So let's see. The openness and transparency, that's just a matter of if you're trying to communicate something and you're holding things back, those are one of those things you can ask anyone who understands personal intercommunications, is that when you're holding something back, it shows on your face, it shows in your body language, even if it's something that's not important for them to know. The fact that you come to them holding back things, it shows, and it kind of develops the sense of distrust, like, wow, they didn't tell me the whole story. And if the whole story is not relevant or it's okay to share, then just share it. It's better to be transparent and open in our communications and share what's going on and the reason why they need to get something done in a certain amount of time. Better than to hold that back and leave someone second guessing. Like, is there something more that I don't know about? Am I in trouble? Just being open is very important to building that sense of togetherness in your organization and with your employees, that we're in this together, and not I'm lording over and I have all the secret keys to the kingdom and you just do as I say. That mentality will not get you very far in any business. I don't care what your business is. And we're obviously working more with nonprofits, but I can't think of a single business where that's a good practice. Honest communication, again, don't be saying one thing and then telling other people another thing. Just be honest. This goes back to the openness and transparency, but just be honest in your communications. Case in point, things aren't going well and you need to improvement in a certain area. You need to be upfront and honest about that, not sugarcoating things or going sideways around the issue. Just say, hey, things are suffering in this area. We all need to pitch in and work on this. That message is going to be much better received than a bunch of hidden agenda messages that is half truths to hide the reality from people. Just be honest. Be honest. People can handle it. They can take it, and then they can act accordingly. But if you don't tell them the whole story and you're not being honest, they really can't step up or even come up with ideas, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to help solve the problems or issues. And so whatever it is, you need to strive to communicate with clarity, accuracy, thoroughness. Those three are extremely important. And it doesn't matter what kind of communication, whether it's your email, a phone call, in person. Again, in person, you want to be careful about what your body language is saying. Another thing we'll talk about a little bit is important to share. If you communicate, when you communicate in an organization, especially nonprofits, in sharing the vision or the goals you're trying to accomplish, this is where communication is vitally important. It doesn't make any sense to have a mission or a vision for your organization if no one understands exactly what that means. but we'll talk about that a little bit more again when we talk about setting goals. But it's important, again, to be clear in your communication. And the last I didn't touch on, because consistency is very important when you communicate. Sending mixed messages, we've all heard that phrase before. That's a killer of morale. That's a killer of an individual's morale or your whole staff's, is when they keep on hearing different things from different leaders or different things from the same leader, which is even worse. But consistent communication, and that also means in how often. In other words, don't all of a sudden communicate like crazy in a matter of 2 or 3 days to your staff, and then you don't talk to them for another week and a half. That kind of lack of communication leaves this gaping hole in what they perceive is their importance and their ability to get their job done without any proper feedback. So consistently communicating is another thing. That doesn't mean you have to hold their hand every day. It just means that you're communicating consistently what is expected and where you're going. So with that being said, this is my second point, is consistent. Between communication and being consistent, almost everything else I'll talk about today falls under these two things. So consistency has to do with, again, if you want to be effective, if you want to get the most out of people, you want to be consistent. You need to, when it comes to behaviors, if you're going to say, this is an example of a good job, then every time someone does something like that, you can go, hey, everyone, look, another example of a good job. You're consistently recognizing and rewarding things that are either exceptional or are good behaviors. Whereas you're being consistent when you're discouraging some behaviors. So in other words, if Tom does a certain behavior and you go, hey, Tom, that is not what we do here. That's not part of our culture. That's not appropriate in the workplace. And then Susie goes and does it and go, well, you know, that's just Susie and who she is. That lack of consistency when dealing with your employees will be like a virus that spreads through your organization. That cannot be favoritism. That's why the next one is fairness. There has to be a sense of fairness when dealing with all employees. Now, that does not mean you will interact with every employee the same, because it's not a one size fits all type of thing. But however, when you're talking about behaviors, things that they're doing, you need to be very consistent on saying, yes, this is good, no, that is bad, and don't have exceptions because there's someone you really like or because of this reason or that reason. Be very consistent. They'll get a sense, if your employees can see that, they'll get a sense that there's some, that you're kind of, they're on an equal playing field, that you're level-headed and you don't like play favorites. That is one of the worst things, is to get a reputation as a manager of playing favorites, because then what you'll have is the brown nosers will be kissing your posterior all the time to get ahead, and then you'll disenfranchise and disengage the rest of the employees who don't think they have a shot, or that's not part of their makeup to be bowing down at your feet all the time. What it lends, if you have consistency in your managerial approach, is a sense of stability. A stable environment for workers is the best environment. That does not mean if you are in a chaotic workplace because you are serving the needs of people and it's always chaos because their needs are so high, that does not mean you cannot have a sense of stability. Your consistency and your consistent communication are two things that can lend to a feeling of stability for your workers. In other words, internally, they'll go, the chaos is swirling around me. That's just part of our job. That's part of our job. Serving these people, it's always going to be a little chaotic. But inside, I know where I stand in the organization, and I know that I'm being treated fairly by my managers. Therefore, I have a sense of stability here. Things are going to be okay. Just need to weather the daily storms. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. If not, let me know and I'll try to explain it differently later on. So now we'll go on to some more ideas, but again, you'll see where communication and being consistent are vital for all of these. The next one's goals. You need to set goals. If you don't have goals, and this is every level of management needs to set goals. I cannot tell you how many workplaces that I have gone into as a consultant where there are no goals set. So you have employees just doing the same things over and over and again. And there's no drive to do anything different. There's no drive to improve, to increase, nothing that we'd say is a measurable of showing progress. They're just expected to keep doing the same thing all the time. that is stagnant. And not only will that not help you get the best results from your organization, but it also will give a sense of stagnancy or kind of just like blah to your employees. In other words, employees want to be challenged. Employees want to try to reach goals, no matter what they are. Now, again, our different organizations and different populations we serve might have very different goals. So the first thing is to make sure you set them. And I think I even actually forgot one thing in goals. Make sure the goals that you're giving to a certain employee, they can actually accomplish. Yes, believe it or not, that happens more often than not. An employee, like a front desk person, is saying, well, we need more clients to come in. Now, if that desk person's only job is to answer phones, do intakes, do data entry, whatever, do they have a direct influence on getting more clients in the door? I'm guessing probably not. Now, their goal should be, do those people come back because they feel like they were served well and they were treated well in that original introduction or coming into an office or a setting or whatever? Yes, there's a goal they can have. It could be feedback or survey approval of, let's say, yes, I was served very well, it was good customer service. But telling them they need to go out and get more clients when they're sat at a desk waiting for people to come into your office, not really realistic goal for them to increase the client movement towards you, since they don't have a hand in that. So make sure your goals make sense for what the person's doing. Track them and measure them. If you just set a goal and never talk about it again with an employee, it's a useless goal, because they never know if they've ever obtained it, reached it, and they never heard feedback from you on where they're at with it. And also, when you track and measure them, you can know whether the goal was attainable, whether it was a little bit out of reach. Maybe the person's not performing up to standards, and that's something you need to have a discussion on. But you need to track them, you need to measure them in some quantifiable way. So even something as doesn't have a number to it necessarily as customer service. That's a feeling people have. Was I served well? Did I feel like I was served well? Was I listened to, etc.? Now, you can give them a 1 through 10 marker on a survey and hope they pick your high numbers. But really, it's a feeling. So you're trying to put a quantitative number to something that's a little difficult to do, but you can do it. So find ways to measure those goals. Then, once you set a time, whatever it is, month, 3 months, 6 months, year, whatever it is, you can sit down with your employee, doesn't have to be a long conversation, and reevaluate those goals and even realign them if necessary to find out that goal really doesn't fit with what we're looking for, or it actually was tracking something that's not a concern and I need to track this instead. So you can communicate again with your employee and reevaluate what the goals are, and figuring out if, hey, you did great, you need to raise this goal, or you know what, that was unrealistic, we'll lower it a little bit, or realignment says that's the wrong goal, here's your new goal. So when setting goals, think short term, give people something to accomplish in the short term, but also pointing them long term and strategically that to things that are greater and beyond, that help propel the organization forward. So give them both short and long term goals. Okay, recognition. People like to know when they're doing a good job. This is not about hand holding. This is not about patting people on the head and said, oh, good job, I'm so proud of you. I think a lot of people with a kind of a more authoritative mindset hate the idea of recognition being brought up, but it's so vitally important, especially with today's workforce. If you think it's not important, or if you think your, hey, good job is enough, I really, really encourage you to listen to some of my other webinars I've done, or do some research, because you'll find out that being recognized is a very important motivator. And if you're trying to manage for best results, you want the most motivated and engaged employees. So one of the ways to do that is recognition. So look for opportunities to reward, recognize, and praise the performance of your people. Look for opportunities. This again goes back to the first 2 points. You need to communicate that, and you need to be consistent. In other words, if one employee does something and it's publicly communicated to everyone as this is a great example of what we need to do, the next time John or Joe does the same thing, a little shout out won't hurt to reinforce that behavior. And let me address something really quick. I think one of the biggest things that I hear pushback on when it comes to recognition is it takes so much time. And if that's your response or mentality to this point as a manager, my question to you is, you need to figure out what your role as a manager truly is. If you think you're managing just simply numbers, or if you think you're managing just a process, you probably should have a conversation with the person above you to get you out of managing people. Because as vitally as important as the services we provide, if you actually, I don't know who's on the call exactly, so maybe you provide a good, not just a service, whatever you do in your organization, if you think you can just do that and forget about your people, you will never move forward and get the best results. The human resource has become a vital important, unless you're automated. If you have a complete automated system, you're in a business, and that's fine. Then you don't have to worry about managing people. But if you cannot get the idea that people will take your time, it will take your time. It is a commitment to get and build into employees and get them to stay and stick and produce for your organization. And that's part of your managing responsibilities. And if it's not your forte, that's okay. Maybe just managing numbers or processes is more what you need to do. But again, if you're managing people and that's part of your responsibility, you need to learn how to communicate, recognize, and praise them. Again, simple little things. A quick email saying, great job on this project. Doesn't have to be the public one, but that could mean so much to one person. Last point I put on here is the customize. The better you know your people, the better you can give the correct and appropriate reward, recognize, and praise. Some people, a simple email saying, good job on that, I appreciate all the work you did, is enough to send them and go, yes, I'm on the right track, and it'll keep them flying for weeks. Another person would rather hear in a staff meeting and say, hey, I just want to point out that so-and-so did this week, and I'm really happy with the results, and they went a little bit above and beyond. So, but know your people. Some people would be totally embarrassed, and it actually gets a negative effect if you end up doing the public thing. So it's just a matter of knowing your people. You might say you manage, well, interesting enough, if you've managed a huge group of people, I would consult with you later about breaking that down, because only as a person, as a manager, you can only actually actively and actually manage a certain number before it's a saturation point where it's too much for you. Your whole job would be people managing and not anything else. But there's ways to break that down and make smaller responsibilities for other people to be that leadership. But it takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort to manage, and knowing your people is vitally important when it comes to doing things and communicating in a way that makes sense to them individually. But we're going to move on from recognition. Another one is be the example. This seems like a no-brainer, I think, for a lot of people, but the way it plays out in the real world is quite disheartening to me from my observation. I've seen a lot of organizations that really get this and get this well, and I've seen a lot that they're absolutely clueless. So employees will follow your lead, whether you want them to or not. And what I mean by that is, if you demand everyone is in by 9 a.m. sharp and you roll in at 9:30 or 9:45 every day, don't expect to not have problems with your punctuality of your employees. They will see you and go, hey, that 9 o'clock is really kind of a fluid thing, because of number 2.2. You cannot have a separate set of rules for yourself. I don't care how high up in the organization you are. You could be the CEO of an organization with 1,000 employees. If you have a separate rules for yourself, get ready for discontent and disengaged employees. The days of sitting back in our ivory towers and just lording over the workers has long since passed. You might be able to get away with that in corporate world, but you will not get away with it in the nonprofit world. I can tell you that right now. They want to see you lead by example. People want to see that you're going to put your essentially your money where your mouth is. Are you going to do the things you're asking others to do? And then that's my third point. Don't tell everyone to do something that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself. In other words, the moment they see that this is the haves and the have-nots, you'll lose your employees. And unless you pay on a scale that is ridiculous compared to the rest of the nonprofit world, you push your employees hard enough where they feel like they're second-rate citizens, they will go elsewhere. I've seen it more often than not. There's a high turnover rate in a lot of nonprofits because of burnout. And one of the things burnout is ineffective leadership. So if you want to manage for best results, make sure you are leading by example. If you think it's okay to burst out loudly in your office to express your anger at somebody or something, then don't you dare turn around the next time someone else loses it in the office and do a write-up or have them, because again, it just, the message you're sending is it's not equal. Now, do you need to hold people accountable because you're the manager? Yes, you do, but that does not excuse you to get away with behaviors that you would not let others do. I hope you understand. That's goes back to an integrity issue. There's 1,000 things. We could have a whole webinar on that. But anyway, be the example. If you want to be to have the best employees you can possibly have, then be the best worker yourself that you can possibly be, and let them see that, because that'll inspire. That will inspire them rather than discourage them if you separate yourself as something above everyone else. All right. So next point is, and I've kind of alluded to this already, you can see how this all flows together, is one size does not fit all. Yes, we have policies and procedures. Yes, we do. We have employee manuals and handbooks. Yes, we do. There are rules everyone has to follow. Absolutely agree. There is. Otherwise, it'd be chaos because you'd have 100 employees with 100 different handbooks. That's not possible. However, if you're trying to manage for best results, not just managing for best results, you want to remember that your team of people, your employees, is comprised of individuals. Each of these people have a different strength, a weakness, they have different needs, they have different circumstances going on in their lives, and they have different preferences. Going back to the recognition thing, they have different ways they'd prefer to be recognized. Now, the better you know your employees, I've already said that today too, the better you know them, the better you can understand ways to encourage, motivate, and get the best out of them. That's what the whole thing's about, is getting the best results. Well, if you want to get the best out of your employees, the more you know them and know what's going on with them and what makes them tick, what makes them move, what makes them motivated, is the best you're going to get out of them, because they're going to be functioning at a higher level of efficiency when they feel supported, understood, and heard. And then lastly, too, there's different ways to correct. We have corrective actions in a lot of our handbooks and whatever that are just for those very blatantly breaking the rules. But what about the little day-to-day things, like the person who says the comment that's really not quite appropriate, or speaking out of turns or over someone else, or just the small things you don't give a write-up over, but small ways you want to do corrective. Well, there are different ways to correct different people depending on who they are in personality. You can correct someone in a meeting and embarrass the heck out of them, and you're never going to hear from them again. They'll never speak up once in a meeting because you've embarrassed them. Someone else could take that and just like water off a duck back, like whatever, sure, fine. But you could also go back to the same person who's tremendously embarrassed, have a little 5-minute conversation with after a meeting saying, hey, you know what, can we make sure next time think about how you're saying that, because it came across really wrong and I really don't think that's appreciated or that's the right way to go about it. That one-on-one conversation might actually encourage them and be supportive and give that sense of stability to an employee, where being called out in front of peoples would have been devastating. So know your employees, know your direct reports, because one size doesn't fit all. Never has, never will. I did this kind of fun on the same things. If you can see it on your screen, transparent is kind of a little bit transparent. Haha. Okay, being transparent with your employees, again, about what's going on in your organization, shows your integrity. It builds trust and builds respect. So whenever you're caught in a lie or even a half truth, or if they figure out you're withholding stuff from them, you're jeopardizing your relationships with your employees and the respect you command as their leader. So be very careful, be very transparent, and guard your integrity like it's the most precious thing to you, because it actually is as a leader. Once you lose that, once once people kind of think, well, man, that person, they won't say lacks integrity. No one uses that kind of terminology, but they start losing respect for you. That is very, very difficult to win back. And in fact, from the little bit of research I did on this one, is that once an employee loses respect for a manager or a boss, typically you don't get it back. It takes a lot of good positive reactions and work on that relationship to ever win that person back, but it's very difficult because you already jaded them. So as you look for some people out there go, they should respect me, I'm their leader. That's right. That respect goes both ways. So make sure that your integrity remains high, so that it's easy for your people to respect you. And be transparent, be open, be willing to share of yourself, and that vulnerability and transparency will go a long way. Yes, will there be an employee that tries to take advantage of that? Let's call that out. Yep, there will be. There's always some of those in the bunch. But hopefully over time, you'll weed those kind out, because they're just trying to use and abuse the system and trying to use and trap you. Hopefully you'll figure out who those people are and help them to find what they should be doing next. But the average, everyday, normal person will take your openness and your transparency as a very good thing and respect you more because of it. Okay. If you notice here, encouraging feedback, opinions, and ideas goes back to communication. This one now is where you're the receiver. So you want to hear from your people. Let me get to my points. The whole idea of the many minds is the many ideas. I like to say I'm a pretty smart guy. Just being honest, I think I've got a pretty solid intelligence. If I think I walk into a room with 9 other people and they have nothing they can contribute to a project or an idea or something that I'm working on, is the most arrogant and foolish mindset to have. I might have, and I don't, by the way, I might have 5 PhDs, but to think that nothing those 9 people can add to what I'm doing is the height of arrogance, and it is truly foolish, because there is no way any person can know everything, and there's no way a person can know all the details and ins and outs of your organization. You might have started the thing, but if it's grown, I guarantee you there's a little pocket somewhere that you don't understand anymore as it's grown, or there's bits and pieces of processes that you forgot about because they were basic and you set them up years ago. But someone knows, and someone's doing that, and someone has a firsthand experience day in and day out of that process or that project or that item. I'll give a quick example again about the arrogance of thinking you know everything. I remember someone said, I ended up getting a master's degree, and I came back home, I was talking to people, they said, oh my gosh, you're so smart now because you had that master's degree. And I told them, you want the #1 lesson I learned from my whole master's degree? #1 lesson: how little I actually know. Yep, how little I actually know. Because the more you dig into a topic or a subject, you find out how much more there is to learn and how little you've grasped it and how much you scratched the surface. And that's from something that you spent time dedicating your time and energy to. Imagine it was from things that you don't even pay attention to anymore. So in other words, your employees see things you may not be able to see anymore. They see things in the process that may need improvement that you've long forgotten about. So do not discourage them sharing their ideas, sharing their opinions, sharing their feedback. You need that if you're going to continuously improve your organization and its ability to serve. So if it's the go back to the front desk person example I used earlier. The front desk person says, you know what, I think I have an idea of how we can improve our intake when someone comes into our office. You better be listening. Seriously, you better be listening. If you think you know everything when you never have not actually checked someone into your process in 5 to 10 years, you better listen to that person say, what is your idea? We got to hear it. Then your job as a manager is to weigh whether the change is worth it if it makes sense or whatever, but the failure to even listen is a slippery slope that you don't want to go down, because you need your people. So, and if you're sharing ideas in a staff meeting, in a presentation, and someone says, you know what, but here's how I see it. Don't be afraid of different opinions. I think sometimes we get very, very sensitive, like people are coming after us all the time. But if you've truly built a team and your employees really understand, you've been transparent, and they know you care about what they do and their efficiencies and their effectiveness, don't be afraid of different opinions. They're not attacking you. They might be seeing something from a different point of view. So my last point, shooting down ideas, cutting someone off from sharing, or cutting someone down because they shared an idea, will just make people discouraged. They'll resent you. They'll be disengaged. And you'll have a person who just sits there and does the minimum. Now, this whole webinar is about managing for best results. That is the worst case scenario, to have someone you're paying who's doing the bare minimum. That's not the kind of employee you want. And that's what you'll get when you never listen to them. I'll give a great quick example of that. I have a relative who works at the iron ore mines here in the Marquette County area. When he first started, his first 5 years, he had 1,000 suggestions. He had worked there for a while, said, man, we could do this, we could do this, and they had a suggestion box. And so he'd write up, he said at least once a week, he'd write up his suggestions of how they could improve their processes and increase efficiency. Finally, after several months, he went to his direct boss and said, I've been writing this stuff for months, and I don't see any of my ideas even being discussed or implemented. And the guy looked at him and said, what suggestion box? Not kidding. What suggestion box? So he'd been put in a box that no one ever even took the time to look for. So once pointed out to him, my relative said, oh, well, now they know I put stuff in there. I should see stuff. Fast forward a year later, he goes and has another conversation, now out of frustration, saying, I sent these things, I alerted you to them, I still haven't seen any discussion or any change. And the person just says, yep, thanks for your suggestion. But nothing was changed. That person has now been working there for over 15 years. Can anyone guess how often he writes suggestions now? That's right, never. And he just goes about and does his job. But he's not looking for ways to improve his position, improve the way they do things, because he knows when he suggests it, it's not going to be listened to. That is horrible. That is the last thing you want if you're managing for best results. Best results means you want to get the best out of your people, and you want to have the best processes. If so, listen. Accept the feedback, listen to different opinions, improve yourself to be the best you can be. But you need your frontline people. You need people from every part of your organization informing you so you can make the best decisions. If you shut them down because you think they don't know as much as you do, or they don't have valuable opinions, you're doing a disservice to your organization, and you need to have a little attitude check. That's a personal little insight there from me. Okay, another important piece is enjoying work. Here's a little secret for everyone. Do you know that you can actually go to work and enjoy it? I know, isn't that crazy? Guess what? Your employees want to do the same thing. No one wants to spend 8 to 12 hours a day, depending on how long their workday is, in a place they can't stand, working for someone they can't stand, working with people they can't stand, in an environment they can't stand. They want to be able to go and spend a third of their day at least in somewhere that they enjoy going to. They enjoy being there, and they enjoy what they're doing. Yes, it's a job. No, work is not always fun. However, that does not mean as managers we can't help our people enjoy work as much as possible. So make the workplace an enjoyable place. Make it comfortable. Make it efficient and effective. Give your people the tools they need to do their job well. Talk about frustrated employee. Tell them to do something and don't give them the tools to do it. Yeah, that'll make them want to stick around and help you out and succeed. No, make sure they have what they need, that the workplace is enjoyable. That doesn't mean you need to set up a pool table or a foosball table or a ping pong table in the break room. If you can, go for it. That's usually a positive. But anyway, you don't need to do those things. Sometimes just having a place to go to for a break, having casual conversations with your employees, making sure that they know you care, that their everyday life is going well by a simple, hey, how's things going? Hey, how's things with your kid? whatever it might be. Those little things go a long way in making people look forward to coming to work. Positivity in an environment, that should be a no-brainer. It's better than being negative. Do I have to explain that? I hope not. Being creative in your environment, being creative in the workplace, sometimes surprising people by saying, hey, I bought everyone lunch today. Let's go in the break room and we all can sit around and chat for the next half hour. Maybe you can't afford that. Maybe you can. Maybe you can come up with a different thing to surprise people. But people can and should enjoy coming to their work, to their jobs. And hopefully you can make it, and you have the power to do so. You as the manager have more power than anyone else to create that environment where they enjoy showing up for work and they want to put in a good day's worth of work. So create that environment. If you need help and suggestions on how to do that, hit me up afterwards. I can help brainstorm and see what you have with the resources you have to make that happen. But your job as a manager, if you're truly leading your people for best results, if they enjoy coming to work, they're going to come to work with a good attitude. They're going to come to the work smiling and ready to rock and roll. And that's much better than a grumpy employee who's dreading the workday. Which do you think is going to be more productive? Okay, good enough. This is actually kind of repeating something we said twice now, communication and also the encouraging feedback. But it's vitally important for a manager to be listening and asking questions. Yes, you get peppered with questions from your employees all the time, do you not? As they say, can I get an amen? You get questions all the time, but you also need to be asking your employees questions and not just say, how's that job coming? But really like, okay, I notice you're doing it this way. Why are we doing it that way? And that's a great discussion again, to go back to getting that feedback and opinions and ideas from someone. They'll say, you know, I don't know why we do it this way, to be honest, but no one ever listens to me and says, I think we should change this. I think this is redundant. I think this is slow. We could do better. And then you go, great, let's talk about that some more, because we do need to improve this. And I agree with you. I'm watching what you're doing going, this doesn't make any sense. But if you don't ask the question of your employee, they may not feel yet at this point empowered or bold enough to bring it up. So by you asking your questions and engaging your employee, you can sometimes get those ideas to come to the surface where they may not have approached you. Allowing their expression and idea sharing. Everyone wants to be a part of something. There is, I think, in my experience, very few people who just want to punch the clock, do their simple tasks, and go home. People want to see what they're doing be worth something, especially in nonprofits, and they want the organization to succeed. Well, that being said, they want to be a part of it. They want their ideas listened to. They want to be able to express themselves. And sometimes, even when it's complaints, they don't want you to solve anything. They just want you to listen. That's all they want, is just know that they've been heard, that you took the time, the 5 minutes, let them complain about something they've been frustrated with for a long time. And it's finally the straw that broke the camel's back and said, I want to get this off my chest. So when you take that time to listen to them, really listen to them, they feel valued, they feel validated, and sometimes that's all they need. They don't need a solution. They don't need you to come running and fixing anything. They just need to be heard. Another encouraging thing is, when it comes to listening and asking questions, is if you have normal staff meetings, it doesn't have to be a one-sided information dump. In other words, I think the best meetings are conversations, not simply reports. So depending on how you do yours, if everyone's just rattling off where they're at something or explaining what they accomplished that day, that's great. But have a conversation. This is a chance in meetings and an opportunity for you to listen and ask questions to make sure that the mission that you have in your organization is being followed. Make sure you can realign your employees back if they've strayed off course, to make sure they come back to center and where the mission and vision is going. So in a conversation, that's much easier than just flat out coming to the meeting. All right, we need to make sure everyone's doing this. Here's our mission and vision. Okay, great, thanks. But in context, without context of what they're doing in their everyday work, that doesn't ring very true. It kind of rings hollow. So use those opportunities in meetings when you're listening to what people are going through and doing, for a chance to really push home your vision and your goals. Tie everything they're doing back to their goals again. Yeah, so I ask questions, ask them what you can do better. Ask them to be able to articulate why you exist, how do you or why do you behave the way you do in your workplace as an organization? What will it take for you to succeed? When you can get those answers from your employees, you can get a sense of how well they understand who the organization is and where it's going. And again, if there's anyone who's really off base, you have a chance to correct or re-guide or realign them. So asking questions like, what's the most important thing for us to be doing now? This idea to hear feedback. What should we drop? What should we not be doing that was wasting our time and energy that we could be better spent doing something else? So when you ask the questions, make sure you are ready to actually really listen to what they have to say, and then take it and then use that for good decision makings. And again, I think listening to your people who are seeing the days in and day out of your processes and service is an extremely valuable way to get the most out of them, to find more effective, efficient ways to move along and do your processes. And that which only can lead to the more effective and efficient we are and the happier our employees, then the better your results are going to be. Your satisfaction surveys will be higher, your productivity will be higher. And you'll have if you ask your HR department, what's the biggest, or actually your accountants and your bookkeepers, one of the biggest costs to an organization is turnover. If you want to keep those employees, keep all that institutional knowledge, all that experience, you need to think about how you're treating them, how you're communicating them, how consistent you are with them to get the best results and to keep them sticking around and on board with your mission. So that was a lot crammed into about 45 minutes or so. I hope it was worth your time. I hope it helped give you some ideas on how to improve your managing, or maybe it encouraged you that you're doing things right. But if you have any questions or follow-up for me, there's my information. It's chadmager@glcd.org. glcyd.org. Yes, there it is. Or 906-228-8919, extension 129. Feel free to drop me a line or an email if you have any questions, or if you want someone to brainstorm some ideas on some of these slides I presented today. But thank you again for taking time out of your morning, and hopefully we'll catch you next time. Thank you.